This is the Strategists, episode 1850. I'm Justin Trudeau. With me, as always, Corey Hogan, Stephen Carter. Guys, did I do that right? Was that correct?
Oh my God, that was like the best. It's the best one we've ever had. It was really good. I'm thrilled to have you here tonight. Thanks for coming.
I'm thrilled to be here. You know, I'm just really looking forward to finding out what's next, and you know, it might be podcasting. I was hoping to get on the show a little earlier. I did email info@thecraspoliticallymotivated.com, but I hadn't heard back from you guys, so I thought maybe I'd just reach out this way and get in touch.
Justin, as we talked about before we hit record, that was for Liberal leadership candidates. Okay, that was not for just anybody off the street who wanted to be on the podcast. So appreciate it, appreciate the enthusiasm, but there are rules. I know these things are foreign to you liberals, but there are rules in society. Okay.
Listen, he's here and he's doing a great job. That's all we can ask for. He didn't, Mark Carney didn't fucking show up, did he?
He didn't, and I'm here right now, and I think you guys are still looking for a host, as far as I know. So,
well, we were, but I actually got a text from Zain like 30 seconds ago while you were doing that. I'm going to be honest, very performative introduction, and so I think we're going to have to pick this up again maybe next week.
Yeah,
we're never more than a few minutes away from Zain bailing on us, so stay close, but not today, my man.
Yeah. Hey,
Prime Minister.
I'm so glad I made it. Carter, anything you want to say before we leave to the Prime Minister? You want to thank him for his service or anything like that? Please go ahead. Now's the time.
Some of the last years have been some of my best years. So thank you very much, Prime Minister.
Guys, we are here. Justin Trudeau is not. Justin Trudeau is done as leader of the Liberal Party. First of all, how are you guys? You guys may have covered this with JT, but good. You saved the can opening
I saved that for you, bud.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. It's like you knew I was coming the entire time. You guys been well? What's been going on? We got a lot.
Good.
We got a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Can I?
We do.
I want to create the agenda for the show this way. Let's focus the majority of it on what we saw over the weekend. I want to spend most of it on the now what, because I think that's way more interesting than what happened. But there are elements of what happened on Sunday, and I'm talking about the Carney landslide victory in the Liberal leadership that I think are worthy of a Strategist podcast discussion. And then I want to get into the now what. What does he need to do? Some of the moves he's already made, some of the things he's already said. How do they land for you guys? But Corey, let's start with what we saw. And I'll get to the results in a second. Maybe I can start with this. Tell me about the production that you saw. What did you make of the Liberal production that they put together as part of this leadership result? It was carried by all the major networks. It was streaming online. They had intros for both Carney and Trudeau by their respective daughters. They had each of the candidates having a on-the-floor mic moment that they had, and of course they had a keynote, one would call it, or plenary, by Jean Chrétien, which probably ran 25 minutes more than anyone anticipated except Jean Chrétien.
Yeah.
So just to summarize for folks, that was, maybe not in that order, certainly not in that order, that was the Liberal production. Corey, what did you make of it? And then Carter, what did you make of it? And then we'll get into the results and et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, I think it was an interesting mix of high concept and low execution, if I'm being frank. There was certainly more Canadian flags at that convention since any convention I can think of, right?
Yeah.
And that the Liberal palette is already very red heavy. It's the color of the party, obviously. I mean, it was just wrapped in Canadiana. You could absolutely see what they were going for, but it didn't entirely hit for me. I feel like they could have spent a little bit more of Ruby Dhalla's money on the production values. That probably would have worked a little bit better for me. There were some things that felt a little bit janky, but let's be frank. They were in the middle of a leadership contest. They pulled it off in lightning time. It is what it is. It was what it was. And as well, I could see why you'd have somebody like Jean Chrétien speak, but maybe somebody should have gone the next step and said, hey, former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien, can I see your speech before you give it? Maybe. I mean, I get you're the man, but can I see that speech? Oh, there's a whole Liberal policy platform in here that the next leader may or may not agree with. Maybe don't say that. Maybe that conversation could or should have happened along the parameters there. And then there was just some basic things that Carter is more equipped to talk about, like the lighting seemed very off.
Terrible.
I think part of it was the massive red light behind them that just was kind of washing everything. And it wasn't a general wash, as my friend Stephen Carter would say.
It was not a general wash.
No, not to be confused by General Washington, which different guy. Certainly General not. Wash, zero slave owners, zero slaves for General Wash. General Washington, several slaves, too many slaves, one would argue. Too many slaves.
What's too many for you, Zain? Because I feel like one might. Just saying.
You can never ask a person of color that question, Corey. I think it's rude. I don't think you can. I don't know why you get a pass. I know EDI is dead. I know EDI is dead, but I think it's still pretty rude to ask a person of color that question, Corey. It's just
Wouldn't it be ironic if Corey was the one who was canceled on this podcast? That would be
inadvertent canceling. Would be right. Carter, what did you make of the production? General Wash, notwithstanding, of course.
I mean, the staging was a little bit too one note with all the red. It was everywhere. It was everywhere you could look and every second shot. I mean, some black would have gone very nicely in the room. You didn't have to cover the whole thing in a red curtain. The speeches, I actually quite liked each of them coming in and doing their own speech
prior to the results.
Yeah. I thought that was good. I thought that it gave everybody an opportunity to be seen one last time, and they kept them to the right length. They were less than 5 minutes long. I quite liked it. I thought that Carney's introduction by his daughter, Trudeau's introduction by his daughter, both knocked it out of the park. I do think that Prime Minister Chrétien was just way too long. And I'm not sure that a 91-year-old, I mean, I was 91 by the time he finished speaking. So, I'm just not sure that that's the edge you want to go with. In 1993, we were relevant. I was a little put off by how long he spoke. I think if he'd spoken for 5 minutes, he'd have been great. But he just kept going and going and going, and he's not the Energizer Bunny. So it did not work for me.
I've got anything. Yeah, sorry. Add anything, and then I've got like two production questions, and then I want to get into the vote in a second.
I was as much as I didn't like the lighting. I was pleased that the set didn't involve a human wall behind them. That was my favorite.
Yeah, no kidding. Nice. A lot of Canada flags, no human wall. Corey, I said these are production questions. They're not. They're more so questions in retrospect that are not about the result, I guess. So let me ask you this. One is a bit of a production question. Any surprise to see Trudeau like on stage giving a speech? Like, I know it's conventional, but this was a race to run away from Trudeau. Any surprise that he got the spot he did and the time and that he did?
No surprise. Yeah. I don't know how you don't have him at an event like that. It's supposed to be a bit of a passing of the torch.
Yes.
I'm sure that the people who set up the event really wanted to make sure he had the moment, in addition to it being the proper thing. Listen, I think that there is some truth to what you said in that people are going to be running away from the Trudeau legacy, the Trudeau record. I mean, one of the most absurd moments, in a way, was when Mark Carney in his victory speech said, and we're going to repeal the carbon tax, and a room full of Liberals madly applauded. Right?
Totally. Yeah. And I was looking at Trudeau because they'd panned the camera to Trudeau in that particular moment, and you could study. You want to jump in on this, Carter? What?
I want to say I was also a little disappointed that he talked about cutting spending and then would immediately throw in that we're going to keep dental care and pharmacare, two programs that I think spend a lot of money without much in the way of results. I was surprised. I mean, he talked about the Trudeau legacy in a lot of different ways, but he didn't distance the way that I would.
While you have the mic, Corey, just hang on for a second. Were you, Carter, surprised that Trudeau got stage time and in the volume that he did, or in the time that he did?
I don't think you get to dictate how long the guy on his way out gets to speak. And apparently you don't get to dictate how long the guy on his way out from the guy on his way out from the guy on his way out got to speak.
So very little rules. So no surprises there. How did Trudeau do, Corey?
I mean, I think he did fine. It is a pretty pat speech. If I'm being honest, this is the kind of speech you expect from a leader. The tears at the start. You talk about the legacy. You move on with your life. You don't hold the stage so long that you're a bother to the person who's coming after you. Jean Chrétien take notes in that context. I thought the speech was fine. It was not the focus of the night. It's not the focus of my memories of the night. And that is 100% the way it should be.
On purpose. There's a reason that Chrétien went after Trudeau and not the other way around, for example.
Yeah.
in your mind? You think that was strategic?
I don't.
It
I
was
mean,
a palate cleanser.
somebody definitely said we don't want it to be the next speech.
We don't want it to be
I don't
back to back Carney, Trudeau, whatever.
Yeah, I
Right.
don't know if we needed the 800-hour palate cleanser.
Sure. Yeah.
But we're kind of dumping on Jean Chrétien, but he
had some great
can still
lines.
bring the fire. He had some great lines. So
yeah.
it just was too much. It was just too long.
Yeah, Carter, how did Trudeau do? And just before you answer, he's still on right now. I know he said he left, but he's hoping that I have some sort of aortic heart disease on the show and that he could take over. So he's still on. So just, go ahead, just so you know.
Great speech. One of the best speeches I've ever seen. He nailed it. His best performance ever. And I say performance in the greatest, with the greatest respect, because I really felt like that was the first time we saw the real Trudeau. Because, I've
long
in
been
the
a fan.
past, I've been critical of the fakeness of Trudeau, but not this time. No, sirree, Bob.
He brought it.
He came across.
You think he should have run for Liberal leader?
If he'd run for Liberal leader, I would have loved to have him as host.
Hey, Corey. Also not a production question. However, I'm going to put it in here because I'll forget otherwise. This was a 2-month liberal leadership race. This was the shortest leadership race that we've had in this country. Should other parties take note about how short and perhaps how robust and effective it was despite being 2 months? And do you think they will take note around the fact that you don't need to drag this thing out for 9, 10, 8 months in the past? And the Liberals, regardless of what you fucking think about them, may have proved that to you.
Oh, I hope they're taking notes. I got to tell you, even 2 months started to feel a little long.
It did.
In the last couple of weeks.
But I want to test, do you think that was just because of the
this not done
timeline we're
yet?
living in, though? Is that just because of the political timeline we're living in, which every day seems like a week? Or do you genuinely believe that 2 months is enough?
I actually now feel that 2 months might even be too much. We are so used to these long contests, and we have not tested in any meaningful way the ability to do a short contest in so long that when we got a short one, it was an absolute breath of fresh air. I mean, I don't think that the Liberals lost anything by having a short contest. They got a lot of money into the race. They got a lot of interest into the race. I couldn't believe how many people registered to be voters. Yes, most of them didn't vote because they were registered to vote for Ruby Dhalla.
That's true. 400,000 to 150. I mean, she had a good 250 in there, for sure.
Clearly. No, you know what? Actually, on that point, if I can just say, it had 38% turnout. That was despite a pretty difficult voting process.
Very difficult registration system, yes.
Compares pretty
Validation.
comparably to the 2013 Liberal leadership race where they had 43% turnout without those registration challenges. So, they got as good as they got last time, I guess is my point. They got more people than last time, and they did it all in a fraction of the time.
Look, Carter, this is exactly where I wanted to go to the two things. Number one, because Corey's hit on the memberships, and that's where I wanted to go to next. The attrition. Big deal? Not so big deal on attrition. Tell me about that. And then tell me about taking notes for a shorter race if you're another party, provincial, federal, otherwise.
Well, I'll tell you, the process was onerous. It was onerous for
you mean to validate? You validate your
it took me a week to vote, which I had to go back and revalidate myself, and my identity was verified by Canada Post. That went relatively smoothly, but the verification process took some time, and I didn't really understand it. But I was going to vote, and I was pretty committed to it. I have a friend who was very committed to it and spent 2 weeks trying to rectify the vote and was unable to rectify the vote entirely. So this onerous process, I think we have gone too far trying to stop the 1% from people who are going to come in and try and fuck with our processes. We've gone way too far to try and stop them from playing. We're pushing out 15, 20% of the population that wants to vote. So I think that we've gone too far on that piece. I understand why it's done. I don't understand why it was done to this extent. And in terms of the I can't remember the second half of your question, so let's not worry about it. You're muted, buddy.
Yeah.
You were.
Well, I was just so delighted by what you were saying, and I just thought, wow, I need to go on mute so nothing interrupts this. Carter, the 2-month contest versus the 10-month contest, for example.
Oh, that's what it was. Oh my God, I've done the 10-month contest.
I think we both haven't to some degree. Yeah, we all haven't to some degree.
There is absolutely no benefit to going for 10 months. It appears that the money that is going to be raised because we know when the money comes. It comes right off the bat, and it comes in the last 3 weeks. It turns out if you take the first 2 weeks and the last 3 weeks and add them together, you still get 2 months, right? Like, this is a perfect length of time. Everybody should be taking this into account because they still charged. This is the largest leadership fee I think that's ever been charged
by the Liberals.
They charged it. Was it higher for the Conservatives?
I think it may have been.
I think it's the largest. Full stop.
Oh, okay. You guys might be right.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
I think it's the largest, and they still got 5 to pony up $375,000
to make their gates. You mean like
yeah. Like, that's unbelievable. In a race like this for 2 months, that was an unbelievable thing. And I would suggest to every party henceforward, if you're not going to do a delegated convention, which is still the best type of convention, or the best type of leadership, then do a 2-month leadership, because the Liberals have proven that it can be done, and it can be done extremely effectively.
Corey, do we just feel that way? I said because of the political timeline as being one of those things, the Trump, generated timeline that is making a day a week feel like a week. But was it also, did 2 months feel like enough because the result was just known? If it was more competitive, and if it was more competitive on the money raised, on the membership sort of splits, on other metrics, on debates, on internal polling, etc., would we have felt, you know what, I wish Chrystia Freeland had another 3 months of this because she could have really got a groove because all the other metrics are aligned for her, for example. So I just wanted to stress test this a bit before we jump into why we love the 2-month or 6-week version of a leadership race versus not, just because of the uniqueness of this one.
Yeah. Look, I think you could still optimize further from what the Liberals have got. I think you could have had some debates earlier. I know that wouldn't be popular with the campaigns because they're all out hustling for memberships, but I think you could do that. I think you could have forums across the country. There are ways that you could do more, but I think the timeline was great. And as we are talking this out, one of the things that occurs to me is one of the reasons leadership contests were so long is because built the leadership process for delegated conventions. And we just slowly swapped out pieces as we got to one member, one vote, online voting. But we didn't change the fucking timelines. And so necessity being the mother of invention, when the Liberals found they didn't have the time, they realized they didn't need the time. And that the process actually runs just fine in a one member, one vote online voting world with 2 months. All of the rest of that was there for processes we don't use anymore. It was to allow people time to have local meetings. It was to allow people time, delegates who got elected to then plan to be somewhere else for a whole week, right? Mm-hmm. And that does take time, but it doesn't take time just to go online and watch a few debates and then to vote. Like that just doesn't take the time. And so what we should be reminded by this is that sometimes you just got to reinvent something that you've just been slowly tinkering. Like, you need to go and stress test it. In some ways, it's like classic operations management stuff. You put this process down, you say what parts of it are not adding value, and you take those parts out. And the Liberals took those parts out. They took out the doldrums, and it worked fine.
Carter, any final thoughts on the length of the leadership race before we move on to the landslide result?
I wanted to address the idea that a second or third place candidate would be able to capture a wave in the second half.
A more competitive second or third place candidate is my point.
I mean, absolutely true. I mean, I think that Alison Redford stands as an example of someone who caught a wave at the end. But is that really what you want? I mean, you can catch a wave at the beginning too. Waves come.
How long was that Redford one, Carter, that you ran? Was that like closer to like this conventional?
2 or 3 years of my life, I think.
No, seriously, was that closer to like 10 months, 8 months?
It was. We started in February. We finished in October.
Yep.
So it was 8 months.
Oh, fuck me, really? Wow. Yep. It's like a lifetime. Wow.
Yeah, it was a really hard race, and I'll tell you something. August wasn't great. No one had a good time in August.
Right, because you're running a race, and no one wanted to run a race.
Yeah, I mean, who gives a fuck? At least in July, you're going to, whatever K-Days or whatever it's called.
Not to further. Go ahead, Corey, and jump in, and I'll jump in with my thought.
To the point of like time and the last minute turn, the time between the two ballots was not 8 months, right? And how much of the movement in that Alberta
Yeah.
BC race
2
occurred?
weeks.
We
in
went
2
from
weeks.
17% to 51% in 2
That's
weeks.
right. So it's certainly possible to change your fate in 2 weeks within a 2-month contest, because you can do
Yeah.
it in 2 weeks in an 8-month contest.
Corey, would you have, as the Liberals, wanted to dominate the airwaves for the conventional 6 to 8 months and then head into an election like we're going to in the matter of mere days or weeks? Or do you like the 2-month burst you got heading into an election? Talk to me now about more of as we get real,
Yeah.
and I promise I'll get to the vote results.
That's not a real choice. I mean, I think that's what parties wish they had.
Yes.
They could have 8 months of dominating the agenda. Gets 8 months of dominating the agenda.
Exactly.
They get exactly the points we talked about.
They get the waves.
Start of the race, membership cutoff, debates, vote. That's it. That's all you get.
Yeah.
And so why spread those across? I mean, that's not how we would run any other communications exercise. We would not just let them languish for a year. We would put them much closer.
Carter?
And we would take our budget and we'd spend we would look at a budget. If we were to do an 8-month communications exercise, we would not be spending all of our money equally on every week, right?
No.
Trying to get the same level of
Of
coverage.
course. Yeah.
We would take our money and we'd say, okay, well, we're going to do a spike here. We're going to do a spike here. This is why we're going to do, we're going to try and get attention in May, and then we're going to shift into September, and we're not going to push very hard in July and August. But there's this way, all the money got spent as quickly as we possibly could because you needed to run a 2-month campaign. And I think that it works out so much better. And, I guess some people may say, well, yeah, but there wasn't enough time for the underdogs to catch fire. Well, that's not what the leadership's there for. Leadership's not there to allow an underdog to catch fire.
Yeah.
Leadership's there to elect the leader.
Right.
Yeah, well, and we say this all the time. You create the contest, you create the outcome.
Yeah.
That's fine if you want to say, I'm trying to create a contest where anything can happen. That's fine. I guess that's a choice. Is that really what's in the interest of the party? And frankly, if you had leadership contests a lot faster, maybe parties would be a little less reticent to change leaders. So there's knock-on effects and there's considerations all over the board, but they're not all bad. The idea that you can get a new leader in 2 months, I think should be liberating for a lot of parties.
Oh, yeah.
Let's get into the results, Carter. When I saw that there was 400,000 people registered and only 150,000 people that voted, I was a bit concerned for Mark Carney because you'd think that a lot of the folks that didn't show up were kind of that soft Carney support, knowing that, his campaign had taken credit for a lot of the sign-ups, so to speak. But that was not the case, Stephen Carter. 86% of the vote, domination in every single riding across the country. He won. He won the riding of his competitors handily. He had more votes, interestingly, I'd say, and more people vote for him in Alberta than in Quebec. Of course, he won both, so it was immaterial, but interesting at the end of the day. This was a crushing. This was 86%. This was similar, actually almost identical to the race that the Alberta NDP here had with 86% for Nenshi, and the next place contestant, I believe, was at 8% or so, under 10. But it was a domination, Stephen Carter.
Domination.
Talk to me about what impressed you or is interesting to you with the results for Mark Carney, and then we'll talk about the fate of Christopher Freeland and Karina Gould in particular.
I mean, having won races are 51-49. You don't walk in with that. Everybody's behind me. Everybody's going to stand with me. 86, everybody's with you. You've got everybody. There is no small faction of people that aren't going to stand with Mark Carney. They're all with Mark Carney. They showed that by jumping into this so massively. It is unheard of to be able to win the entire country in this fashion. Normally, the way you would, work through this type of a leadership is you would say, okay, where's the weak spots that I can start to really gain some traction? Where am I not going to focus? Where am I not going to spend effort? And it would appear that the Carney team didn't have to make that kind of trade-off. And if they did make that kind of trade-off, and we did this with Nenshi in 2010, Zain, we didn't drop any brochures in Ward 6, right? We were quite confident that we weren't going to do well in Ward 6. There was 2 councillors from Ward who'd previously represented Ward 6 that were running. Barb Higgins kind of had a big group of people who were supporting her in Ward 6. And then she won every poll in Ward 6 that election, because sometimes things just take off on you. and things just took off on Mark Carney. I think that people were hoping for first ballot. People were hoping for 60, 65. I don't know that anybody was walking around, saying it's going to be 80, 86. Was Keto Maggie saying 80, 86
Oh,
from Main Street
no.
polling? No, he was not.
Yeah.
Okay,
There's a
I
bit of
just
a miss
wanted to
for
check.
Keto.
Sorry
Yeah.
for Keto. Yeah, we feel bad for him.
Corey, Corey, what's more interesting to you, the 86 for Carney or the 8 for Freeland?
Well, so that was 86 in points. He got even more.
Yes,
of
he
the
did.
vote. He got
On the raw
87 or
basis, that's
something.
correct.
Yeah. I mean, it was just an absolute domination. And I certainly well beyond what I had imagined. I thought it would be 60 to 70%, I think is where I pegged it. That was clearly underestimating the guy. It is fascinating that the percents of points mirrored almost identically the Alberta NDP contest. I think it's
Yeah.
one of those great political coincidences, but I also think it's not that much of a coincidence. Parties are looking for saviors, and parties are willing to push behind saviors at this point. But there is a day after that saviorship, and I think what we've seen with Naheed Nenshi and the Alberta NDP is it's not a guarantee of general election resonance or success, right? Certainly not in the short term. All the Liberals have is a short term. So what I'm most struck by is that we don't even seem to think of it as that big of a deal anymore. Maybe it's just because we're Albertans, but like we said Pierre Poilievre was absolutely killing it at 68%, right?
Right.
Pierre Poilievre's numbers look pitiful compared to Mark Carney's numbers here. But there's just this expectation that the leader gets these massive numbers, I think, these days. And that's a weird thing, right? Because there are going to be leaders who win limping out with 55%, and they might just forever be toast now. We just might not be able to hold on to a leader who doesn't win by such a commitment.
That's interesting, that especially when you're kind of suggesting that might be the new sort of political era that we're in. Carter, 8% and 11,000 votes for Chrystia Freeland. I know we can go back to he or she who stabs the, doesn't get to wear the crown. I get it. But this is more than...
Because you're about to ask a question about it.
But I think this is not about that. What I'm most interested in, Carter, is that's not like Chrystia Freeland didn't have a bunch of organizers, MPs, others helping her out. How does that only amount to 11,000 votes? Like, skip the 8%. I want to look at the raw numbers here. How does that only amount to 11,000 votes and 11% in your own riding?
I mean, that was just brutal. She just took took an absolute shit kicking. I think that Martha Hall Finley did better. I'm just taking a look right now. Look at that. My name's mentioned in her Wikipedia. Who knew? It doesn't say how much she did.
Yeah. Story time with Stephen Carter here.
Yeah. So story time with Stephen Carter. But listen, this is not a reflection on Chrystia Freeland as a human being. And I don't believe this is a reflection on Chrystia Freeland, the Judas who sat and took out Trudeau. I think this is a reflection on Mark Carney and Mark Carney alone. People were looking at the situation and they decided. I am quite certain that if you looked at Chrystia Freeland's voter ID numbers, they were 10 or 15% higher.
Than the 11,000.
Yeah. No, 10 or 15% higher in percentage. I would bet that they would be double, triple what actually her voter ID. But I think that she did what we did, like what I've done with different campaigns too, which is get out the winner's vote. Because the bottom line is the winner has been determined by something bigger than you. And that would be my word to Chrystia Freeland if she was listening today, if she wanted to host the podcast. I'd say, Chrystia, this isn't about you. This was about Mark, and this was Mark's election. Sometimes you don't win because you can't win.
Yeah.
Nicely said, Carter. But Corey, 11,000 votes across the entire country of Canada.
Yeah. I think that there were signs, right? If you looked at it, looks like fundraising was perhaps the most predictive sign in this particular leadership contest. And Mark Carney beat her 10-1 in fundraising, and then he beat her 10-1 in votes. And we'll probably need to keep closer eyes on fundraising numbers going forward when we get these midterm numbers, because they probably actually tell us more about the state of the race than perhaps we like to pretend sometimes, right? And And yes, you can play with it, but you can't change the macro story there. 11,000 votes is rough. But there is a phenomenon when you are, let's call it 30%. When you're below 30% support, you might as well be at zero. Because you are acutely aware you're in the minority. Like, you can talk to your friends and you'll realize, oh, they have a different opinion than me. And in a political party, which is a bit cult-like to begin with, I'm just saying political parties in general, not just the Liberals.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big pressure. That's a pressure to say, well, I mean, if 8 out of 10 of my friends are voting for Mark Carney, I can't even convince myself that I'm the majority with other people who are just silent. Like, it's clear everyone's voting for Mark Carney. And the bottom can really fall out of a campaign like that, because then people want to get on the winning team. They start saying, well, if he's going to win anyways, I don't want him to have a number that in any way jeopardizes that leadership or make it look weak. These are thoughts that normal voters are increasingly having, but partisan voters in political parties are definitely having. They're not just thinking, what's the result I want? They're saying, if the result is what the result is, what's the best result for the party?
This is one of the things that I try and set up in a campaign, and that is, can we look like the winner? Because if you look like you're going to be the winner, you're going to get a disproportionate number of votes, because people like to vote for the winner. Lowly engaged voters will use, I think that person's signs are the best. I think that they had the most signs out. I think that they're going to be the winner, so I will vote for them.
I hate to predict future, but this is why I'm going to start with you, Carter. Does this dampen Gould or Freeland's future within the Liberal Party, a showing this rough?
No, I don't think so. I think they're both going to wind up with very interesting cabinet positions.
You think so?
I think they're both. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Corey, do you believe that both of them are going to get cabinet positions? And the broader question, do you think this poor result for them impacts their future within the Liberal Party or maybe even politics? Are they done?
Yeah, I think Freeland will probably be offered a cabinet position because it would be bad form not to offer her a cabinet position. I think she's done. Like, there's not, like, she doesn't get to win next time. Like, if this is as high as it gets for her, she can be a cabinet minister. That's fine. Gould is probably done herself some favors by being in the race, but let's be clear, she pretty dramatically outperformed the buzz, or underperformed the buzz.
Underperformed the buzz. I would absolutely
deeply underperformed the buzz. There was sort of an Ottawa bubble that was really quite taken with her, and it was never my cup of tea. It felt like she was the continuity candidate. Felt like she had all of the Liberal branding of Trudeau. She
also felt like the candidate after the Liberal Party fails and rebuilds sort of candidate. She really sounded like that.
Yeah, well, definitely, and it certainly maybe that would have been fine if the Liberals had no hope. But a funny thing happened on the way to the forum. The Liberals found hope, and they started thinking maybe they can win this next election. And so, she really underperformed there too. Certainly, I would say a week ago, there were a lot of Liberals kicking themselves and saying, fuck, why didn't I enter the race? Even if I didn't win, I could have increased my profile. I don't think those same Liberals are feeling the same way today. I think they're saying, that didn't really work out for her. Like, Frank Baylis almost got more points than her. So,
yeah.
I just don't think that the view of it is the same today. I don't think she damaged herself, but I no longer think she helped herself. I think there's a certain criticism and a jaundiced eye that now looks at that campaign.
I'm kind of with Corey on this one, Carter. What do you think of Gould in her political future?
Like, she gets a great cabinet position.
No.
She gets a great opportunity. What do you mean no?
I mean, I said, no, you said that before, but you don't think, do you feel like this has been a neutral exercise for her? Or do you think she fundamentally...
it's been a better... I think that a name that I didn't recognize is now a name that I recognize. And I think that that's good for her.
Despite getting 3%.
Yeah.
3%.
I mean, she got half of what Martha Hall Findlay got.
Zane for leader could have...
Yeah, less than a third of what Joyce Murray got.
Yeah.
Zane for leader could have gotten 0.1%.
Isn't that interesting?
Could we have gotten 11,000 votes for Zane for leader? And not just to be clear, not for me, but just Zane for leader.
Yeah.
Oh, no, Zane for leader, for sure.
Zane for leader, for sure, could have gotten 11,000 votes. There's no question in my mind.
I think we definitely could have mobilized. Okay. That was the what. Now what, Corey? When should he call the election?
Right away.
What's right away? Let's get like specific about this. So we sit here on a Monday. What's a right away?
Well, there are a couple of variables that I'd let them play with, but I think within a week and a half. that I think if by not this weekend, but next weekend, it's not clear buzz in Ottawa that an election call has either happened or is imminent, that would be a real mistake. You just keep the plates spinning. You keep moving. You do not allow the inevitable cycle of meet the leader. Oh, wait, do I actually like the leader to occur? You just keep moving. I also think it's consistent with Mark Carney saying we got to defend Canada because, well, I think the Liberals have done a good job of moving things along and not allowing any time for, doldrums would have been fatal for we talked about this in advance.
Yep.
But doldrums would have been fatal for the Liberal campaign because Poilievre could have pointed to them and said, geez, it would have been great if we had a fucking government, if we had a legislature, if we had the ability to pass laws. None of that happened because everything moved so quickly. You want to maintain that sense of urgency and speed because at the end of the day, it is still actually an enormous problem that Justin Trudeau left us in this position. We still do not have permanent leadership right now dealing with Donald Trump at a very dangerous time for our nation. And we don't want people to have time to remember that. We can't fuck about. And so it's time for Mark Carney just to, if he's got enough moves to propel for 1 week of media cycle, yeah, go for it. Whatever, man. I'm not necessarily convinced that I would appoint a cabinet. Sounds like he's going to. I'm not necessarily convinced that I would go through the steps of appointing the Jean Charest of the world. Bet you we're going to talk about that in a bit.
Yep.
But if he wants to do that, I guess he's leader. I guess he gets to do that. But get to an election and get to it quick.
Can I pick up on one thing before I ask you, Carter, when he should go? Corey, does he not have to appoint a cabinet?
No, absolutely not.
Well, he could keep the existing cabinet.
Yeah, I mean, from a technical point of view,
Inherent.
absolutely not. From a politics point of view, you could make a case to me that you should. But the problem he has is he's inevitably going to have to make it out of pieces of the existing cabinet.
Right.
And what does that look like? Like somebody's in, somebody's out. Somebody is in, Pierre Poilievre hits you with them. Somebody's out, hurt feelings, and it disrupts morale. Although with your commanding victory, probably not the hugest problem you have. I just will be frank, I'm not sure cabinet members get you enough to make it worth your while unless you're willing to go really crazy and go outside of the existing MPs. But that presents challenges as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because you'll have trouble vetting them in time. You don't know if they're good political operators. And if they're not good political operators, they're not a benefit. A week after they've been appointed, they become a liability.
I heard a rumor, Zain.
Yeah.
Corey Hogan's going to be appointed to cabinet and has to run in Calgary Confederation.
Oh, that's exciting.
Heard it on a podcast, did you?
I heard that on a podcast.
Okay.
And
that's good.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's going to be big. But the thing is,
do any of us get ambassadorships? Do you think that's possible?
Oh, yeah, you're going to get one.
You think so?
Oh, yeah.
Where?
Not the good place.
No, a bad place.
Bad place.
Yeah, a real bad place.
Iceland.
Is Iceland a bad place?
It's supposed to be beautiful.
Iceland,
it smells.
Iceland
it smells.
Sulfur. Yeah. It's a problem,
It's okay. He's been stuffed up for 4 years.
When should he call an election, Carter?
I think he has to. Here's my timeline. He has to call the election before the House prorogation ends. So that to me is the
March
is the deadline.
March 24th or 23rd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he can't go back into Parliament and the House of Commons. I think that would be very, very tricky to get to that stage. So sometime in the next 2 weeks, I guess, because what's today? It's the 10th.
Yeah. Can I tell you why he can't go back, in my opinion? And maybe this is an expansion of Carter's thoughts. Maybe
tell me why.
It's the same place in a different way.
Because Jagmeet's ready to make a deal. As long as there's support for workers, Jagmeet Singh is willing to probably give you until October if you need.
Who?
Who? The guy you need, apparently, or needed. No longer need.
Yeah,
don't remember that name.
He can go fuck himself.
The problem you have is that point of urgency I've been talking about. You can't run a campaign that's like, I'm here, I'm going to defend the country, it's different times, it's crazy times, and then go into the House of Commons to only do a throne speech and then either go across, and it looks cynical if you do it yourself, and it looks like you're inept if you're brought down by the government, by the opposition, after reasonably thinking that you could hold the parliament for a couple more months, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, what's the upside there? You either look like calculating and cynical, which cuts against your authentic brand that you're trying to build. I'm not a politician. I'm not the slick guy like Pierre Poilievre. Or you look like you can't get a deal done with fucking Parliament, and you're going to go ask Canadians to let you get a deal done with Donald Trump. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. So just don't waste your time.
Carter, let's start putting the pieces together for what the election strategy should be in your mind. And I want you to build with Corey here. You can start with anything you want related to geography, brand, message, also the added sort of element of how much should Mark Carney be doing the job of prime minister while he campaigns versus running to be prime minister. And I look at the Ford playbook of what he did in Ontario, which go down to Washington, do the job. I'm premier. Like, I got to do the gig, and then spend 4 or 5 days doing that. How much? I'm just giving you options to consider and comment on. But Carter, give me your sense of what the campaign strategy here in broad strokes should look like, and I'm going to ask Corey to refute and then potentially build.
Well, I think that there's no really big secrets here. Atlantic Canada is jumping out into a significant lead. So you're going to go there one time. I don't think you're going to go to the United States. I don't think if you're going to go anywhere, I'd say go to Europe. And I wouldn't go to Europe during the election campaign. I'd go to Europe next week. That would be my play. The rest of the time I would be in Quebec and Ontario. Yeah. And then in the lower mainland of British Columbia. And on my way to the lower mainland in British Columbia, I'd land one time in Edmonton and one time in Calgary, maybe one time in Regina, one time in Saskatoon.
Well, I'm really going to need him to show up that one time in Calgary.
Yeah. Well, for you, no, I think you got it, man. I think as the cabinet minister for energy, you're probably going to do just fine.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, this isn't a bad idea. And I'm thinking you guys talk for a second. I'm going to make a call.
Okay.
It's probably he's not all that connected. We know that, Corey, right? We've seen this on previous. We've seen this on previous calls. Probably a call to George Hall, of all people.
Hang on, I got to mute.
It's like, George, do you have Mark Carney's number? Do you have Mark's number? I feel like you could give it to me now. Yeah. He's actually taking a call.
Yeah, he's actually on a phone right now. So this is.
Oh, he was actually taking
at the end of the episode.
Oh my God! Hey, listen, Corey. Yeah. Start answering this for me. Your take on what you've heard, the campaign strategy. You've heard a lot of things from Carter. He does not need to hear what you've said. He rarely does, anyways.
That's true.
What is the campaign strategy for you in your mind?
Well, I think that the contrast you're setting up is between polished and not, credentialed and not.
Yep.
And you're saying I'm a serious person for serious times. And so your actions need to follow accordingly, right? You can't look overly political. You have to make sure that you are leaning into your wonkish nature. And frankly, you don't have enough time to become good at politics. And one of the things we didn't talk about was the quality of Mark Carney's speech.
Yes, I want to get that at the end. But yes, jump into
it. I thought the delivery was not fine. I thought it actually showed a certain lacking of political communication skills. And I don't mean it's boring. I mean the ability to convey information. So we should hop back to that.
Yep.
But I'll say this. You don't have time to get good at that. So you're going to have to turn that vice into a virtue. You're going to have to say, yeah, I'm not a polished politician. I am a public servant. I care deeply for this country, and I am putting all of my efforts into this. I'm deeply connected. I have the skill set that's required at this moment. And yeah, it's not creating 3-word slogans. Sorry, not sorry. Like, that has to be your plan. And I am one of these people who believes once you've figured out that brand, all questions are answered by brand. All your actions are dictated by brand. And that means you don't do the throne speech bullshit that Carter and I have already discounted. It means you don't go around with the glib sayings. You've just got to comport yourself accordingly. And that's what he's got to do. And there is really, if we're talking about election call in the next week, 2 weeks here, we are only talking about 7 weeks until this is all done.
Yeah.
And there's a whole new...
Late April, early May.
Yeah, a whole new parliament. So you don't need to go for long, but you need to make sure that you're consistent in that time. Because the last thing I'll say on this point, your brand is pretty durable if for 4 years you act one way. Your brand is in a lot of jeopardy if people have known you for 30 seconds and you start acting in a different way. So he has less margin for error than a politician that we've known for a long time.
Yeah. By the way, it's happening.
Oh, okay.
Fantastic. It's a very short phone call. It seemed like an incoming call, but I'm not going to question it. I'm not going to question it.
No, it was an outgoing call, and it looks really good for Corey.
Okay.
Did you mention the
Not Zain,
the
I
Iceland
noticed,
thing?
though.
The Iceland thing that I wanted.
Yeah, I did spend a little bit of time talking about you, Zain.
Yeah.
It didn't go well for you.
Did he acknowledge that he knows me?
Not really. It
Okay.
was more along the lines of.
But I know him. I know him,
Oh.
and that's all that matters. Carter, let me
him.
tell you something. I've got two actual questions about strategy here. You guys have given me your roadmaps and Corey a bit on messaging, Carter a bit on where and what you do. Let's start with this one. Is Doug Ford a friend
Oh yeah,
to Mark
Yeah.
Carney in this election?
Absolutely.
big time.
Talk to me why. Carter, you go first, and then Corey.
Number one, the history of the Liberals and the Conservatives splitting the government in Ontario. This is a real historical trend where if you have a Liberal government in Ontario, you have a Conservative majority of MPs in going to the House of Commons from Ontario. So I suspect this is going to mean that there's going to be a very good number of seats for the Liberals. Plus, Doug Ford has turned into Captain Canada. And Corey's recommendation that, he get appointed to something to manage, negotiations on behalf of the government. I mean, I think it's going a step too far, but I don't think it's going too far. I think Mark Carney was on the phone to Doug Ford probably within 24 hours, within the 24 hours since the election victory.
Corey,
Yeah, in fact, we know they've talked, and Doug Ford has said things like, "Sounds like we're on the same page on this one here, right?" And you know what he's doing there? He's providing some of his shine, because Canadians really like what Doug Ford's done.
Yep.
Polling tells us that. On to Mark Carney. And yes, the people who have that kind of power to give have that kind of power to take. And you should be a little bit cautious about what Doug Ford might do. And it's pretty easy for him in a campaign to say, "Oh, geez, at the end of the day, I'm a conservative, and of course I'm going to vote for Pierre Poilievre. Shucks, I like Mark, but I'm obviously not going to vote for. I don't see him eye to eye with him on all these business things or whatever the fuck he wants to say, right?" But if you tailor your relationship knowing that that is probably the most likely outcome in week 5 of the election, he can't hurt you that much. You give him a job, or you maybe you don't formally give him a job. You say, "Doug and I don't see eye to eye on everything. Our politics are very different, but we both love Ken," right? And so you've put it in a little bit of a box. You've put your blessing of him in a box. You've put his ability to hurt you in a box. And his ability to help you right now far exceeds his ability to hurt you. And I don't see any reason to believe that he is going to step away from that Captain Canada role. So as long as he's saying nice things about the country and working with you, you're in great shape.
Corey, I'll start with you on this. How do you keep the Team Canada / tariff / Donald Trump singular threat ballot box question alive over the course of an entire bid period? Or do you? Or do you allow it to go to things like housing and cost of living and other things before you take it back? How do you, if you're Carney here, ensure that it's about the thing that is giving you the viability to begin with?
Well, you have a couple of set pieces, right? April 2nd will be a big date for tariffs. You can look at the calendar and find other flashpoints. You can build other flashpoints, frankly. I don't mean like get another opportunity for us to get tariffs, but you can look at things that are happening in the United States and lever onto them. You can also take a lot of at-bats and see if you can get something really interesting. Like, I've been thinking for a while, is there anything that would be better for Mark Carney and the Liberals than if they could get through friendly media or people asking in the right format of Donald Trump, if they could get Donald Trump to make the statement, "Canada is broken," how much would that help the Liberals? Because I think, like, all the help, right? If somebody just said to him, "Mr. President, the Conservative candidate says Canada is broken in the Canadian election. Do you agree Canada is broken?" And you go, "Oh, yes, I absolutely believe Canada is broken," right? And, then you have a video that you run in the closeout week of the campaign, "Canada is broken, Canada is broken, Pierre Poilievre, Donald Trump." I mean, it writes itself.
Did you do Jimmy Stewart both times you did impressions?
No, my Jimmy Stewart sounds, I'm afraid to do it.
Yeah, I can't do accents. There's a really good reason why I can't.
Yeah.
Zain would be
The
offended.
Geneva Convention.
I would not be offended.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Nope.
No, once again, I'm not offended. On behalf of all the people, go ahead.
No, the Scots will be angry.
Oh,
Because
okay.
I did a Scottish accent one time, wound up seriously in the wrong continent.
Carter, how does he keep the ballot box
we're gonna have
question
to hear
alive?
that.
How does he do it?
No, Zain.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to hear that.
No, but in
No.
that accent. Sorry, I'm getting there.
No, I'm not doing it.
Answer.
I sucked at accents. Here's the thing. It's going to be a ballot box question about the United States, but it's going to be, how do you translate that United States ballot box question to the to everyday Canadians? How do you make sure that it applies to everyday Canadians? So yes, we're going to be talking about the tariffs. Now we're going to be talking about cost of living, because the cost of living with the tariffs is going to be a significant issue. We're going to talk about housing prices. We're going to talk about housing starts, because now we've got to change the way that we look at building these houses. We've got to change the way that we're looking at constructing everything in our country. So all of a sudden, everything is going to be put into your primary slogan. And your primary slogan is, I'm better than that guy. I'm better than Trump. I can take Trump on. But now you're going to bring it into everything else. And I'm doing a really poor job of explaining it. But when I was doing Alison Redford's campaign, we were, everything was able to be put into the frame of mother of a young daughter, daughter of aging parents. Mark Carney needs to be able to put things into the frame of, I can take care of you better against Donald Trump.
Corey, can we talk about Pierre Poilievre? So
Yeah.
This is our weekly visitation of, have they found their lane yet? They still have a scattershot carbon tax Carney lane, which is about him talking about the shadow carbon tax and being just like Trudeau. They've got the fact that he's sneaky, which seems to be an underlying element around how he's sneakily going to bring the carbon tax. They've got that he's weak because he's going to sell out Canada like he did Brookfield and their headquarters to New York rather than keeping it in the United States. And of course, now Pierre Poilievre is saying, not necessarily in ad format yet, that he's got major conflicts of interest, that he's profited off of American companies rather than keeping his money in Canada, etc. So I don't know if I'm being charitable with the descriptions, because I'm trying to be as literal and with the descriptions, but have the Conservatives found their attack line yet? Do you feel like there's there finally for them? And we're seeing a lot of ads because they're trying to get money out the door before everyone is equalized in terms of their spending power when the writ happens in a matter of days. But where are the Conservatives at least on the paid media side that you've seen with some of the messages that they're trying?
I've really been thinking a lot about this sneaky claim that the Conservatives continue to try to lay at Mark Carney's feet. And some of its uses are absurd. The idea that it's sneaky that the Liberals replaced their leader with Mark Carney, that's not sneaky. The whole country wanted him to resign. He resigned. They got a new leader. What the fuck is supposed to happen besides that? But they are so fixated on sneaky, and they're trying to shoehorn sneaky in so much.
I think it's partially because there's that clip that, like, his face looks like...
I don't think that's why.
Yeah, you don't think so?
I don't.
I'm curious.
No, I think... Yeah, well, look, Stephen Carter just described a message frame and trying to fit everything into a frame.
Yes.
You build those for your opponent, too, and they clearly think they have something, maybe not with the word sneaky, but the sentiment behind it. And you have to know they focus group this. You have to know that they went in there and they put a couple of material in front of people and they put a couple of arguments in front of people and said, how does this make you feel? And if I had to guess what is driving the Conservatives' obsession with sneaky, which to me feels like an attack that's not quite found itself yet, I think that they've probably put a couple of comments in front of people like, did you know Mark Carney hasn't fully disclosed X, right? He hasn't disclosed where all of his sources of money are. What do you think of that? Oh, that makes me feel not good. In the Canadian, here's a clip of him answering a question about that at his campaign launch. Now, that was not a great clip for him, in my opinion. And he got a little bit defensive in ways I don't think he needed to do. And I think it was the weakest moment of his launch. It wasn't even that weak of a moment, but it was clearly the weakest moment of his launch. Similarly, what do you think about the fact that Mark Carney chaired a company that moved headquarters out of Canada into the United States? Oh, I don't like that very much. Well, let me show you a clip of him answering those questions, and you see him be a little bit defensive. I also think Mark Carney bled is an exaggeration. He had a paper cut for a couple of days on this particular issue, but it showed a certain weakness and an inability to answer a question or not show the best side of him, when I frankly think he could have answered that much more plainly and much quicker than he did. But the Conservatives, lacking significant ammo in other ways, have found some things that people don't like, and they're saying, well, what's the combination? What ties this all together? And so they're trying right now to find a way that they can bundle this general feeling of like, don't be so comfortable with this guy. He's not being entirely forthright with you. They haven't found it. They haven't found it, but they think that there's something there. And I will be curious to see if they stick with what to me seems like a fundamentally not clicking message track, or if they keep fumbling around in this space until they find it. And if they find it, the game's different. But right now, it just kind of feels clumsy.
Carter, where are they on their journey? You're a trained communications and political practitioner. From what the products that you see them putting out on paid media, where do you think the Conservatives are on their journey of finding something or finding a series of things that work as a line of attack on Mark Carney?
They're still throwing the shit against the wall, hoping something sticks. I don't agree with Corey. I don't think that they've narrowed it down to one thing that's going to work. I think what they're doing is they're trying to take 4, 5, 6 different ideas, see which one works, see which one shows up in their focus groups next week, and then they'll start to hone in. And that's okay. That's okay to be throwing everything against the wall when you've got millions of dollars to spend every single week. So you may as well give it a try and then do a focus group set next week and see which one actually starts to have resonance.
Can I tell you?
That's fine.
Can I tell you why I don't think? I mean, the only reason I don't agree with you on that is because they're so clearly trying to shoehorn things that are not sneaky into the sneaky frame. And you don't do that if you're message testing. You don't try to force.
But you could also look at it the same way with their Just Like Justin, which they've ended multiple ads on, and Carbon Tax Carney, which they've ended multiple ads on. So it does seem like they're still in journey mode, like they're just trying to figure out what is working for them. But the second part of this question, Corey, is any advice for the Conservatives who have, to Carter's point, millions of dollars to spend and a limited time horizon to do so? What would you advise them to do? What is it doing what they're doing right now, which is throw things out in multiple tracks and then maybe, as a writ approaches, maybe have a nugget of wisdom that you can go on? What would you advise them with the resources that they have that outstrip the other political parties?
So, I mean, I would absolutely say go out there and test, go out there and survey, go out there and run focus groups. They should be running them nightly. They should be running them in every region of the country. They can't bring this money into the campaign if they've exceeded like the amount that you're allowed to spend in the campaign. So just go nuts. Try to make sure that when you hit the campaign, your ads in that more finite spending realm, they're all hitting. They're all cracking at 100. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if they're doing that right now. Maybe this is what that looks like. Maybe we'll hear about it in books afterwards. It's like, we ran 1 million fucking things. We look like a disjointed mess, but behind the scenes, we were getting data. Getting really important data that allowed us to run this motherfucking campaign that just put the boot to this guy's throat. Maybe that's what we'll see. But between them trying to shoehorn things into a frame and between them running ads that have everything, which makes it a little hard to disaggregate, I'm a little less convinced of that.
Carter, any advice for the Conservatives as they have these resources to spend over the next, let's say, week?
It's a problem for me, Zain. As you know, I'm a winner. And as a winner, when I give advice, people listen. And I don't really want to be giving advice to Pierre Poilievre. Listen, test, focus group, spend your money, go crazy. Don't leave a nickel in the bank beyond what you need to spend in during the writ period, and learn as much as humanly possible.
Anything you'd advise to spend money on that isn't just paid ads?
Strategists advertising.
Oh,
I mean, is that a paid ad or is it a sponsorship?
Title sponsorship?
I think that we
Pierre
would take.
Poilievre
Would
presents?
we take a
1 week.
Pierre Poilievre sponsorship?
Depends on the number. Okay, I got
How big would the number
I
be?
got a
Depend
number
on
in
the
mind. I got a number in mind. Let's
Okay.
all say our number at the same time. So just to be clear, the terms are a 1 week title
Okay.
sponsor on behalf of Pierre
Yeah.
Poilievre and the Conservative Party of Canada on this program. Okay, ready? On the count of 3, our number. 1, 2, 3, 25 grand.
$30.
Okay, I was at 25 grand, which means I have the highest.
10,000's too low, actually. I wouldn't do it for 10 grand.
25
Wow, that would
grand.
be tough.
I would do it for
Yeah.
25 grand.
I would do it for more. I would do
it for $25, and an airfare on Flair Airlines to and from Vancouver.
Well, that is consistent with our other title sponsorship.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm upping it to 250,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. I could work with that.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Carter, could you work with that?
No,
If they are interested, and they are listening at the 59-minute mark. info@thecraspoliticallymotivated.com. We won't filter your message out like the other guy that we filtered.
Can I just say that for listeners, we have in fact faced this problem in the past, and it did not resolve. It did not resolve itself.
Are you surprised that I'm the one that said no? Yeah.
No, it's good. It makes me happy.
But
I'm glad I don't have that money in my pocket.
Are you? Yeah. So am I. You're welcome.
Yeah.
You're absolutely welcome. Let's move it on to our over/under and our lightning round. Stephen Carter, we do this for you and your bedtime. Are we going to see any net new cabinet ministers in the Carney cabinet? So these are people that have never been in cabinet over the course of the Liberal lifetime of the last 10 years. Are we going to see any of those names in the Carney cabinet?
Yes. We're going to see Corey Hogan from Calgary and Calgary Confederation.
Man.
Corey, are we going to see any new names?
You're going to see new names. Because otherwise, what's the point? Like, you don't want to look like you are the exact same team. You were writing Pierre Poilievre's ad for him if you do.
Corey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how did the Liberals do pulling off this leadership race in your mind? 1 being, of course, the lowest, 10 being the highest.
I'm going to give it a 9. I mean, you got to give a little bit of space for improvement, but I got to tell you, if you had said to me in January it would go this smoothly, I would have said that's pretty wishful. Like, things always go wrong in leadership contests, and frankly, nothing fucking went wrong. I know that there's like an article today saying, why didn't these people vote? But I already talked about it. Like, the open contests that the Liberals do, really low entry. Like, it's very frictionless at the front end, and then the friction is introduced when you vote, and people drop off. It was 43% in 2013 when the Alberta Liberal Party did one. In 2011, I think it was 32% who voted. That's the nature of contests like this. That the media doesn't understand that is not the Liberals' fault. That's the system that they had going in. They didn't pick that system. And, man, I got to tell you, like, they set what I thought was too high of a price point. They got 5 fucking candidates for it. They set a timeline that seemed really ambitious. Maybe, it went just totally fine. They had an online voting method. They brought in Canada Post. I know that there were challenges with it, but those challenges disappeared pretty quickly. And they did it. Like, they landed the plane, and they did it with all of the passengers still alive. That is no small feat. And the Liberal Party board and the Liberal Party office should be very proud of what they accomplished. Because I've run leadership campaigns from the party side. That was impressive. Really impressive work by the Liberals.
Carter, Corey's giving it a 9. What are you giving it?
I'm giving it a B+, Zain. I think that the problem was that the Canada Post verification was just too onerous. But other than that, I thought it was a very good leadership.
Carter, let's end here. One note. No, that's not what I'm calling Mark Carney's speech. I'm telling you, give him one Stephen Carter strategist note. What it could be anything about the content. It could be about the substance. It could be about how he said it, what he said, how long he said it. What is the top note you would want to give to Mark Carney after hearing his victory speech at the Liberal leadership race?
Smile in every event the way you smile at your daughter.
Corey Hogan, what's the one note?
Don't try. You don't have time to get better.
Corey, do you want to actually give one note?
That is the note that he's also given to Zain.
That is my
it's
one
worked
note.
out perfectly.
Okay. Listen, let me expand on it, but you know this. We all work together at Hill and Knowlton. We used to do training for people, corporate clients, media training. They get so much fucking worse when you try to make them better until they get better. He does not have time to go through the journey of getting worse before he gets better.
That's a really good piece of advice.
He should ignore every note that his team gives him for the next 7 weeks.
Yeah, you don't have time to strip someone down to the studs and then build them again, is what you're saying.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Jean Charest.
Make it a virtue.
I'm just going to throw his name out. Any comments?
Well, we don't even know what he's being potentially offered, so just to
see your role. He was offered Calgary Confederation.
That's what I heard, too. That's what I heard. We're going to leave it there. That's a wrap. Us on episode 1850 of The Strategists. My name is Zain Velji. With me, as always, Corey Hogan, Stephen Carter, and thank you for that very nice cameo, Justin Trudeau. We shall see you next time.
Guys, hey guys, are you still there? Listen, I can send Zain to Iceland if it means that I can host the show. I can make that happen. I also know Mark, so think about it. I'll check in next week.